What's up guys, this is Tony J Films with another deck list profile. Now this build is another deck list I came up with. It is Cyber Dragon Infinity Trains. Now this deck mainly tries to get the rank 10s out, which is used with Night Express Knight and Heavy Freight himself. But I wanted to do something different than most train builds. I've done the Malefic Trains build where you ran Malefic Cyber End Dragon and that was able to give you your super dimensional XYZ. But so I was thinking about cards that are ran a lot these days, and I noticed that any deck can practically go into Cyber Dragon Infinity by using Planetella Knight. So I figured, why not run this strategy in trains? So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to my deck profile, Cyber Dragon Infinity Trains. Now we start the deck list off with the 3 Night Express Knights, and then you have Heavy Freight Train, Darrowcane. You have 3 Ruffian Rail cars, mainly to get the effects off to search out Night Express Knight or Heavy Freight if you're in a bad situation. Goblinberg is to special summon either Pathfinder or Kagatokage. You have Kagatokage at 2. I was going to go 3, but 3 seems a little bit too much in case you end up opening up into all 3 of them, then you're stuck doing nothing. So 2 is always better. And then Planet Pathfinder is another strategy I use to get out my revolving switchyard a lot faster. But in the certain case where you can use Goblinberg to spec Pathfinder and then automatically special summon Kagatokage, you have all 3 materials for Planetella Knight, so you can go right from Planetella to Nova to Infinity. Or if that doesn't work, and let's say you just have Goblinberg and Kagatokage, you could just play Instant Fusion and get out Nodin. Nodin is a big key in a lot of people playing Cyber Dragon Infinity with Planetella. The only deck that I know of that can probably get out Planetella without Nodin is most likely Satellar Knights themselves and Star Seraphs. Raigeki, I threw this in the deck mainly because it's become a big thing since this ban list started. Once it was at 1, everyone started main decking Raigeki, so it comes as no surprise that someone else would run it. So I just decided to throw it in this deck. Rhoda at 2, mainly to search out Goblinbergs because there's not occasions where you'll actually draw it, so Reinforcement Armies to draw it out faster. Upstart Goblin, which is self-explanatory, you get a draw out of the fact that you give your opponent 1,000 life points. But with trains, you can always go into Gustav Max or Sky Palace and you can deal some damage right off the bat. 2 Terraforming, which is another way to search out Revolving Switchyard. I don't really use Pathfinder to get Switchyard, but if times are tough, then you can always use Pathfinder as a way to get out Revolving. Pot of Duality, now this card is only at 1 because the deck mainly revolves on specking a lot of monsters. But if you have nothing in your hand to special summon, you can always just play Pot of Duality. You get to see the top 3 cards of your deck, and then you can go forth with your plans afterwards. And then Mystical Space Typhoon is at 2. I would run it at 3, but I have room for other cards in here. And mainly the staples that you see in my side deck, being Mirror Force and Prison. Now, Train Connection is a new card that I decided to throw in any train deck I've ever built. I've never ran Train Connection in any build I've done with any type of trains, and this build I wanted to try it out, and I have to admit I've gotten FTKs, well not FTKs, but I've gotten OTKs with this card in particular, where if you can go into Gustav Max you can do 2,000 damage, then play Train Connection, he automatically becomes 6,000 in a single duel. That's perfect damage already. So Train Connection is a really beast card. The only problem, which is the backside effect, is no other monsters can attack. Well, if you have MST, you can always just pop Train Connection, then your monsters are free to attack during the battle step. And then Revolving Switchyard, that's self-explanatory why it has to be at 3, because the main goal of the deck is to search out both your Night Express Knight and your Heavy Freight Darrowcane. Then I have the staple, Bottomless Trap Hole, Compulsory, Solemn, and then Skill Drain and Ring of Destruction. Now, Ring of Destruction is another good card, mainly because, like I said, it inflicts damage to your opponent, and just like Red Eyes, trains are basically a burn stereotype for me. I always go into Gustav Max most of the time, or Sky Palace, so I'm always doing effect damage somehow. So Ring of Destruction is also good. It could be a win condition for you in your deck. You get your opponent so low to where if they summon anything in that range, you just chain Ring of Destruction, then you win the duel. So Ring of Destruction is a really badass card. I'm glad it's back at 1. And this is actually the first deck I'm using Ring of Destruction in, but I've played Ring of Destruction in Yada Lockdown, which I still have. And yeah, so Ring of Destruction is a beast card. Now we're going to move on to the extra deck. Because of the 3 instant fusion, you have to have the 3 node, and that's self-explanatory. Super Dimensional Robot Galaxy Destroyer is only in here because if you have Night Express Knight, you get Heavy Freight, and then if you didn't use Revolving Switchyard, you can get Ruffian Railcar, and then you have Super Dimensional Robot Galaxy. Sky Palace, he comes as no surprise. You target any card on the field, banish it, and then you inflict 1,000. So he's another one who deals effect damage. Dora, which is a beast card to save any monster on your side of the field, not necessarily always has to be Dora. And I've done this strategy once so far with this deck. I've had Infinity out, and then I got Dora the very next turn. They tried to bait Infinity's effect. I used Dora's effect on Infinity. Infinity didn't have to waste his effect. So that was really badass. Dora's a big key in this deck when you have Infinity out, because when people see Cyber Dragon Infinity, they're going to want to try to bait the effect just so once per turn. Once that goes, they're free to destroy it any way they choose. And also, it's good because with Infinity, you get to steal monsters, etc. It's like in a Stardust Assault mode mixed with a fucking Honor Arc. But it's a really badass card, I think. It's going to be something big. I know a lot of Cyber Dragon decks use it, and then from there, it just started evolving into all these other decks. Next up is Super Red Knot Rail Cannon Gustav Max. He's self-explanatory. If you get Night Express Knight and Heavy Freight, you detach Heavy Freight if they have a card on the field. You do 2,000 damage, you get to destroy any card on their side of the field. And then if it's only 1 back row, you're free to attack directly. So that's basically 5,000 on 1 turn. Infinity times 2, Nova times 2, and I have Planet Teller at 2. The only reason why I do this instead of running the staples, which are Honor Arc, Castel, and Exciton, is just in case something goes wrong and you don't happen to get all 3 cards to use Planet Teller's effect. I mean, I would throw in the staples, but at the same time, I want to focus on the main goal of this deck because it's called Cyber Dragon Infinity Trains for a reason. So I just think side decking the staples, are pretty good. And then the other replacement card for MST, which a lot of people are going to start using more in this generation, is Galaxy Cyclone. I still think scenario-based MST overpowers Galaxy Cyclone, besides the fact that if you play Cyclone, they chain the card. Yeah, you have the effect of the pop a face-up card, but sometimes your opponent might not even play cards that stay face-up. So Galaxy Cyclone might just sit in your graveyard for no fucking reason. So maybe sometimes Galaxy Cyclone is not better than MST. There are situations where Cyclone is better than MST. It's like a whole Honor Arc and Castel debate because they're both really beast-ass cards and they both destroy. And with Honor Arc and Castel, sometimes taking the monster is better than bouncing it back into the deck. So with that whole debate going on, I personally still think MST is overall the card that's worthy of being in this deck rather than Cyclone, but I do have Cyclone side decked at 3. And then Mirror Force and Deep Prison, that comes as no surprise. Most decks might not play any of the battle traps anymore. I like to side deck them just in case, because you never know when you need to side deck a battle trap based on who you're fighting against. Like if you're fighting against Necroz, maybe you might want battle traps, or if you're dueling anything practically meta, Deep Prison's probably your way to go. And I really like Deep Prison for that. But yeah, that's it for this deck, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. You guys are more than welcome to try it out. Tell me what you guys think. If you want to make edits to the deck, and then maybe if you find something better I can do with this deck, you're free to leave a comment. You're willing to subscribe to my channel, go ahead and subscribe to my channel to keep up to date with more deck profiles, duels, and I'm going to start doing other stuff such as reviews on my channel and tutorials, etc. I have one Photoshop tutorial, but I will eventually do more. If you guys want to request a certain tutorial to do, like if you guys are new to Photoshop and you don't understand how to do something, you can be more than willing to send me a message and I'll definitely be happy enough to make a tutorial for you. But yeah, that's it for this video, guys. My next video is going to be this CDI Trains deck in action, so stay tuned for that. Take care, everybody. We have Herakti himself, the badass, as well as your requirements, Obelisk, Raw, and Slifer, which all are good in this deck. I've actually at one point had summoned Slifer at 0 attack points, and his effect was just enough to stop my opponent, which is really funny.